and joining us to do the very final segment. Unfortunately, this is going to be the very final segment, governance and corruption. And joining us, Clara Berry Kasati. Thank you very much for joining us. She is a private legal practitioner also. Ace Kojo Anan and Kuma always wants me to say he's a lawyer, simply that. Thank you very much for joining us. He calls himself the chief servant in his firm. All right, so what is it that in the course of this year, as far as governance and corruption matters are concerned, what are we richer or poorer for in how we handled or are handling a particular issues of corruption? As I mentioned, the judicial scandal, the Shraj board sacking. We have had issues of press corps accidents and attacks on journalists. There have been strikes by doctors, etc. There have been the questioning of elections, whether we will have a new voters register. There have been judgment debts, white papers that have been issued. All of these issues, we want now to throw this to you to be the conversation that this particular thing is supposed to be. So my guests will do a first round of 3 minutes each on a subject that they want to speak to. How did we deal with it, and are they satisfied how we dealt with that issue as a country? And after that, you come in with your questions. So I'll want to start first with Ace Ankoma. Which issue does he want to look at, and how does he think we dealt with it, well or not?
Well, thanks, Samson, and thanks for having me here. For me, two critical issues stand out, and there are many we can deal with, but in the limited time of 3 minutes. To my mind, and from what I've read, the biggest shot in the arm of the anti-corruption crusade is the ANAS investigation. I'm trying to find out, but in Ghana, I don't think any such revelation of such a scale has ever happened. And I'm trying to find out where there have been parallels in the world. But really, 34 is such a huge revelation. And I think that is the biggest shot in the arm of the anti-corruption crusade. And you call, and on your program, I had said, Ghanaians, let's give the process time, because the process has to be gone through. And I think we are beginning to see the first fruits of the process. That some are unhappy with the fact that some might have just received a slap on the wrist. I say, still take your time. It hasn't unraveled yet. It's just the first step. In all of these hearings, there's first finding of culpability, and then there's the punishment stage. Yes, 2021 were found culpable. It's not over yet. They're still dealing with high court judges, and these are the lower court judges. And then at the punishment stage, some mitigation was brought in on account of those who were prepared to concede right from the beginning. But that is not the end of the process. There is the criminal process, which I understand the CID has begun. And there might be the General Legal Council end of it, which will decide whether or not they can continue even to serve as lawyers in the country. And so the process is evolving. And this is what will create the confidence that Ghanaians need in the judiciary, that when some were found wrong, the system dealt with them. The second issue I want to deal with is with the voters register and the whole register issue. And I sat down and watched that whole TV coverage, and I've been listening to the debates. And I say to myself, but this problem has been resolved. Now I'll say something that might make Dr. Maneboama happy. I think the president has resolved this. In April of 2014, a gentleman led a Change.org petition to the president that why don't we centralize all our databases into one? Because who needs a new or audited voters register if all of us are registered, our details exist? When you are 18, the central database just pops off an email to the electoral commissioner that these are the people who are eligible to vote from today. So we don't have to gather, we don't have to remove. If we have a centralized system that records births and deaths, and these are doable. Now, this came up around the 27th of April 2014. On the 30th of April, the president, and I believe it was either coincidence or Mr. Maneboama's social media savviness, spoke on the issue. And he said, this is doable. And in fact, he gave an order that it should be done. And so to my mind, since 2014, the government has been doing this. So why are we arguing about voters register? Then I understand that in the new budget, now money has been provided for it. I think now that Dumso has been resolved, or now I hear may not have been resolved, this should be the central issue. Let's just do this. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We don't need an audit. We don't need a new one. Let's put all databases together. It does not make sense for me to carry a voter ID, the SNIT ID, National Health Insurance ID, and the president says this.
Okay.
Check the president. I'll just wind up with this. So if we throw them all together, the issue is resolved. But will it be thrown together? I think Ghana's problems are captured in a phrase I have formed, ABAX. Why haven't we done this all these years? That's why we can't do it. But if we put our minds to it and what the president has said should happen, we will do it. Thank you very much.
Those are two issues, and the manner in which they've been handled, that he appreciates one, and the other he feels we ought to, step up the game. The next person to tell us which issue, or more than one, that's been handled in a way that he appreciates or does not appreciate or feels something ought to be done, would be Abdul Malik Kwekubako. Yes, so which issue are you looking at? Judgment?
Well, my good friend is preempted me. Obviously, I was going to have gone for the ANAS expose, but I can understand that he's preempted. So I would go for, look, the let my vote count case in court. The judgment that was given to the effect that it was improper for the police to stop street demonstrations via the route of the ex parte application, and also to the effect that they ought not to be pursuing that case at the circuit court, I think was very significant. We had been debating that issue for quite a long time, and it's been a tradition, a certain subculture by the police all these years, in how they wait till the very last moment and they spring that kind of surprise on demonstrators. A very fundamental right in terms of the constitutional rights that we have. And people had been asking whether the Public Order Act had not in a way conflicted with the fundamentals of the Constitution. So I think that was a certain step forward. Maybe we need to do more. The lawyers may have to look at all the full ramifications, but I think that was a very significant thing. Also, the speaker, the ruling on the speaker's refusal to swear an oath, I thought that was also a significant thing. It went to court, we litigated on it, and a certain ruling came out. There are still questions being asked in terms of sanctions and all the rest, but it's an area for us to interrogate and advance our democratic culture. These two areas, I think, were quite significant.
Thank you very much. And the first issue you raised about the police now being stopped from going for an ex parte motion to stop demonstrators and doing so at the district circuit court was led by the gentleman who is right here. Let My Vote Count Alliance is right here. Please give us a wave. Thank you. King David, that's how he was known on the University of KNU UST campus. Okay, now let's hear also from Dr. Omane Boama, one or two things about governance that are handling, meet your expectations.
Two things. The first has to do with the bold steps that are being taken by all stakeholders in terms of the fight against corruption as anchored in the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan. As you are aware, Parliament gave approval to that action plan, and steps are being taken at all levels to ensure that we are able to achieve to the fullest level corruption itself being a very, very high risk activity. And if you recall, only recently the report about the monitoring and evaluation of actions that have been taken so far was presented to all the stakeholders. And it is important to emphasize the fact that we all have a stake in this: politicians, the judiciary, legislature, civil society, and all. Once we begin to look look at it that way and we begin to hold individuals, institutions to account, as NACAP is indicating and as the processes are being implemented, we are likely as a society to win the fight against corruption. And this can also be dovetailed into the way that the nation has dealt with the ANAS investigation. I happened to be with the president when, for the first time, the Attorney General broke the news to him after she had been led into what ANAS had done. And I'm sure everybody who has been a careful observer of the political landscape will indicate that all that the executive had to do to ensure that the judiciary had the free hand to deal with the judges and the people who were involved were done. And that also has contributed to where we are as we speak now. It is expected that going forward, we will all put our shoulder to the wheel and desist from the politicization, unnecessary politicization of the issue, where even you take an issue of judgment debt, commissions report, and there are several issues about people who are supposed to be valuing projects, and then they will sit on water bodies and be indicating the boundaries and all that. These are all contained in here. But what are we interested in as a nation? It has been reduced to drillship, a fight between KT Hammond and Mr. Chikata, just because they are politicians. If we are able to go beyond that, civil society doing its job, all other stakeholders ensuring that the job is done, I'm very confident we will be able to achieve the anti-corruption fight and the drive that we all aspire to as a nation.
Thank you very much. And we'll now hear from Clara. What's 1, 2, 3 that you can address within 3 minutes that you feel we dealt with them very well or we did not, and how you wish we should have dealt with them. Now, I changed my mechanism in choosing who to give some of the books to. Our guests continue to buy some of the books, sabbatically speaking, for us, and we've got quite a bit out there. So in the next 10 minutes, that is by 11:30, if you're still here in this auditorium, you get a copy. Thank you very much. Clara.
Thank you very much, Samson, for having me and for the question. Fortunately, all the other speakers have spoken very well on the topics. I've listened to what Kweku Bako has said, Honorable Omanibu Wama, whom I knew in his student politics days, and then, of course, Mr. Esankuma, who was my lecturer in civil procedure, and then whom, of course, I cut my teeth in law in his chambers, and he was one of 5 partners under whom I began my legal practice and learned very much from. What I will comment on and add will be on 2 issues: the judicial corruption and then good governance and corruption. If there is time, then I would add something on the sacking of the Shraj boards. For the judicial corruption, I will say that although there were suspicions already that there was corruption in the judiciary, we didn't have the facts. So for the first time, we were confronted with the facts. And I think when we were confronted with the facts, it was a rude awakening. A lot of people couldn't deal with it. It was not acceptable to a lot of people, and it was a rude awakening. I like the way it has been handled. I think the Chief Justice has done very well, and the committee has done very well in the expeditious manner in which they have dealt with it. I have heard the concerns raised with respect to the sacking of the 20 judges, the fact that some of them were given benefits. They were asked to go home with benefits, and some people were very unhappy with that. The fact is that in the law, if you look at Section 17 of the Judicial Service Act, it does give that option. It lists a number of penalties. One of them is that you can go home with a reduction in your benefits or no reduction in your benefits. And I believe the Judicial Committee had the discretion. After they listened to all the evidence, the demeanor and everything, they exercised their discretion, and they gave reasons for why they exercised that discretion. So I think it was well exercised. They gave their reasons. We may not agree with their reasons, but they have told us why they chose that option for some of the judges. But for me, it doesn't end there. I think if we make the ANAS video everything about naming and shaming and just jailing the affected judges, and then we go to sleep, we wouldn't have done much. I don't think we would have achieved much. I think this is the first opportunity that we have a chance to look corruption in the eye, eyeball to eyeball. And I think we should also, apart from punishing the conduct, we have to look at how our laws deal with it. I think that if you look at our laws, there is no comprehensive definition of what corruption is. If you look at it, it tells us that it is the giving, promising of something of valuable consideration for the influence of official conduct. I think we probably need to enhance our laws a little bit more. We have to consolidate. As a people, you are able to confront your enemy if you know exactly who your enemy is. There should be exact definition or description of your enemy. And I think the enemy here being corruption, we need to be able to define exactly what corruption is. If we are sure in our minds exactly what corruption is, then we can better address the issue of corruption. Why do I say this? Giving of gifts. Sometimes it's not very clear to people when a gift is a gift and when a gift is corruption. And I think that lack of clarity is there because the law on corruption in itself is also not that very clear. So I think this is an opportunity for us as a people to state what exactly corruption is. Am I running out of time?
You have actually overdone your time.
Just 30 seconds to conclude. On the issue of good governance, for example, I like the fact that for the first time, well, not for the first time, but we have seen the involvement of ordinary people. The Shraj, it was started by a Ghanaian citizen. The Anas video was also started by a Ghanaian citizen. I think we will benefit from all of this if we look at our role as individuals in all of this crusade against corruption. If we do that, we will not lose the fight. I don't think we have lost the fight yet. I think we are actually in a position to strengthen ourselves against the fight, and we should take that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, there are already hands that I can see up there. Let's give the microphone out to those who want to ask questions. Ace Kuma spoke about the Anas expose. If you have any questions about that to him, aspects that you are not satisfied, you could ask him. He spoke about the issue of the voters register, and he pointed to the fact that we already have the answer, and just dealing with solving the issue of identity is the way to go. So you listen to all of them, but you could also ask a question about an issue you feel the one you are giving the question to or directing the question to has a competence to assist you to better appreciate it. Who's got the microphone, please? All right.
My name is Samuel Brian Bwabe. Dr. Manibuama, how come President Mahama has not shown commitment in fighting corruption? And this can clearly be found in the instance where fraudulent monies paid to NDC cronies like Woyome and Isophoton, whatever holding have not been retrieved.
Okay, thank you. So the question is about the fact that Martin Amidu has been able to secure some monies for us in order to get these monies, and for how long we've not been able to retrieve, get the monies, really. Okay, so next question, please.
Yabuabian Samoa, to Dr. Manibuama. Isn't there a certain sense of erosion of responsiveness to Ghanaians when the president seeks policy credibility from the IMF instead of Ghanaians? Because the IMF imposes conditionalities on us. So the president tells us, I'm going to the IMF for policy credibility. What about Ghanaians who elected him there? Okay. Secondly, you mentioned the white paper. What's this practice about government determining the sweetest parts of white paper, of reports, and issuing them out as white papers, which sometimes actually reduce the value and the entire findings of the original report? You have the Judgment Debt Commission report. You are complaining about the drillship because the government chose to emphasize the drillship in a white paper.
Okay, the question is very clear. Thank you very much. We'll hold on there. And please, those who have the microphone, my guys who are giving out the microphone, lead it yourself. Don't give it to one person and leave the decision to them to hand it to the next person. Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me pick it from where Yao left off about governments issuing white paper. White papers are products of the laws of this country, if we want to do away with the issuance of white papers when commissions of inquiry present
I don't
their
think his problem is with the
reports.
white paper.
I'll get there.
His problem is
I'll get
how
there.
the white paper
I'll get there.
determines what
I'll
has to
get
be
there.
done.
I'll get there. But I want to state that they are products of the law in the country. And he is a lawyer. If they want to come to a consensus that let us expunge that from our books, that will be fine. Now to the next point. When I hear people talk about government picking the sweetest parts of reports and presenting them in white papers, and I'm not saying Yao has not read the white paper, my first thinking is that they may not have read the white paper. I have cited, and this is not the first time I'm citing this, and I told you this off camera when I was in the studios about 2 weeks ago. I spoke about people who do some reconciliation for the courts and their conduct and all that, and the kind of remedies that the white paper is accepting and all. Unfortunately, the key stakeholders who have the opportunities to bite the microphones that are presented to them decide to highlight what suits them. Tell me which aspect of this white paper can let anyone conclude that government just decided to highlight just one side. And I will urge you, if possible, next week, dedicate the entire period to various segments of the white paper that was issued on the Judgment Death Commission, and I will be here so that we can have a discussion on it. Otherwise, we do not put the issues out there this week alone, and this is not to pick
Because
on.
we are working with time, if you could move on to the next issue about retrieving the monies that the High Court says we should collect.
I'm happy I have addressed the issue of a government highlighting certain part, because that is not the case. Everybody has access to it. I even have a soft copy here. I can hand it over to you after the program. The next issue has to do with policy credibility. It is not the case that government has not engaged Ghanaians. Government engaged Ghanaians. I do not want to go into the politics of some political parties that I decided not to be part of the Senchi process. But the Senchi process went on. Very good suggestions came out of it. Through all that process, as a result of the synthetic nature of the international financial architecture, you are doing the right things. You are ensuring that even where you have to increase fuel prices, you ensure that that is done. Yet the international community is saying that what you are doing is not enough. I want you to juxtapose the homegrown solutions that were being implemented to that of the IMF program, the extended credit facility that is being implemented now, and tell me the difference. The only difference that you may find will be the lending in terms of the central bank, that is 5% for the year 2015 and then 0% for the year 2016 and a few others. Otherwise, everything in there was as good as what we were implementing within the homegrown solutions. Okay. And this is where I say that the synthetic nature of the international financial architecture is at the bottom of this, where you do not control the key segments of your economy. That is why President Mahama says the solution is about transforming the structure of this economy, producing more
Dr.
of what
Maniboma,
we
those were questions from two people, and you have 2 minutes to each, and you have done almost 5 minutes now. So if you can just 30 seconds, tell us about the...
On the issue of payment of monies to cronies, once again, I think that is something that, unless you are not following the processes in court, is any lawyer who is current here telling me he's unaware that the Attorney General, as far back as 2014, filed a process entering judgment so that the Attorney General could retrieve the money. But that was denied. That is point number one. And that the process for retrieval is also ongoing. The next thing has to do with the criminal prosecution. Is anybody here telling me that as we speak, the Attorney General is not pursuing an appeal in court?
Okay, thank you. We heard about the appeal in the course of the week, and this how it goes. Even if the questions are directed to one particular panelist and they are responding to them, you have the right to ask to speak to it, and you have a minute to also make a contribution. Yes, who's got the phone? Yes, microphone.
Something. Thank you very much. For us in Let My Vote Count Alliance, we are happy, at least our fight and our consistent appeal to the Ghanaian populace to see reason in the need for a new voters register took another level, as admired by a prominent citizen, Uncle Kweku. We thank God a precedent has been set in that respect. The point I want to establish, and of course ask further question here, is that we saw what happened in the NDC internal elections regarding how the people had lost confidence in the credibility of the electoral roll with which the elections were conducted. Some died. There were mayhem in some constituencies. Properties were vandalized. The question is, at the national level in future elections, stakeholders, do we still want to go into future elections with the existing voters register?
Thank you. You've exhausted your time. And as he talks about the voters register, I need to announce to you that the Institute of Economic Affairs is inviting all of us to the its program, which is a 2-day lecture featuring Professor Tahiru Jega, who immediate past Electoral Commissioner of Nigeria. He's in the country. Professor Jega will shed light on the factors that ensured the credibility of the electoral process in Nigeria, and with the aim of helping Ghana draw valuable lessons ahead of 2016's general election. In Accra, the lecture comes off on Monday, the 14th of December, at the main auditorium of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, RIGE, Accra, and the time is 4 p.m., Monday, 4 p.m. In Kumasi, the lecture comes off on Wednesday, the 16th of December, at the Golden Tulip Hotel, and the time is 10 a.m. The IEA invites all of us. Yes, who's got the microphone?
My name is Haruna Kingsley. My question goes to Madam Clara. When I first heard about the judicial scandal, especially involving the judiciary, my heart fluted violently in the panic fear. Now, per the submissions you made just a few moments ago, my question is, given the laws about corruption in this country, I am attempting to believe that those laws are made to offer leverage to some people in our society whilst confer reprisals on others. Is it fair system?
Okay, thank you for the question. So let's have the first question answered first. The second question, yes, it was directed to you, and then there's the voters register.
Thank you very much for the question. With respect to the laws, I won't be, well, let's look at the laws beginning from the Constitution. If you look at our Constitution right from the preamble and Article 1, you can see that all powers of government, all of government, the reason why they are given the powers they are given is to be able to exercise them for the welfare of the people. So fundamentally, no law should be made that should be inimical to the welfare of the people. I do not think that the laws were deliberately made to abuse the rights of the people or to benefit the office holders. But assuming that they were, it is back to us as a people to talk about those laws and to get amendments. Is a reason why laws can be amended. I think our laws are not comprehensive. I think they are not deterrent enough. I think they leave a lot of loopholes in some situations for people to get through, but I wouldn't say it was a deliberate design. I think it is an inadequacy that we need to address as a people, and that is why I think that this is an opportunity where we probably need to have that discussion as a people. I think we should debate the issue a little bit more. We should review our laws a little bit more and decide for ourselves what we agree on and what we will put on paper to bind all of us.
But why do you say that law is inadequate when you have said here again that they are suffering that punishment and that is not going to be alone? Okay, it's Asankuma who said that. They are subject to criminal prosecution for which they will be jailed. It's elevated beyond a misdemeanor as far as the punishment is concerned. They would get up to about 20 years or so. And then beyond that, Asankuma mentions that they stand the risk. Do I really say they stand the risk? You could say that they have been disbarred or debarred. Those who are lawyers will not have the opportunity to practice their trade.
They haven't been.
How much punishment do you want for them?
Until action would have to be taken by someone to see whether or not they will be disbarred. Even for the criminal, when I say it is inadequate, even from the criminal aspect, it is up to the Attorney General unilaterally to even decide whether or not she wants to prosecute them. If the Attorney General decides that I'm not going to do anything about it, we can't do anything about it.
Thank you. Now let's have Ace.
I agree, and I think I'll borrow a word from Dr. Manibwama. It's the architecture of the law that we have to look at. In terms of the content of the law, trust me, Ghana has very strong anti-corruption laws. But we have to look at the structure again. You have to look in about 6 or 7 pieces of legislation to make sense out of it. We need to probably put it together in one document. But we also, and on the issue of it may be a misdemeanor, but it's an enhanced misdemeanor. We should stop calling it a misdemeanor, corruption a misdemeanor. But in the Procedure Act, there is an enhanced punishment up to 20 years, although it's a misdemeanor. So it's not a 3-year misdemeanor thing, but it's up to 20 years. But why are we going about it in such a circuitous manner? We need to just, like Clara is saying, state it out clearly. But let me say something else that I've said that maybe we haven't taken notice of. Many of you have seen the Anas video. Now let me tell you what. If it had been videos of managing directors of the banks in Ghana taking money to give or not give loans, it will not be an offense. It won't be a crime. Because in Ghana, corruption is only a crime if it is committed by or of a public officer. We need to strike that out of our law like yesterday. So if we caught a bunch of referees taking money to throw football games, we can sack them as referees, but they can never go to jail because they are private individuals. They are not public officers. That is how serious this matter is. So we need to look at the architecture of the law. And on let my vote count, in fact, that decision by the High Court judge is awesome. That ex parte process was cowardly. We've spoken against it many times. It has taken one bold judge to throw it out. But let's think of it again. Don't we need a bigger, simpler register of all of us with one card that we use to vote and do everything? Let me give you an example. You think our national ID card doesn't mean anything. I was somewhere else. They asked for an ID. I thought I was being smart. So I gave them my national ID card. They turned the back, put, is it laser, that red thing on it, and my name and details appeared on their monitor. And this is the Ghana ID card. And so we are not far away from the solution. But once again,
okay. So, yes. Okay.
Quick one. I think that for those of you who recall the CJ's views on restricting the rights of citizens to demonstrate, you know that some of us will always share in the unfettered rights of citizens to have access to the right of lawful assembly. But let those who are clamoring for a new voters register not gloat over this Pyrrhic victory, because it doesn't translate into a definitive decision of a new voters register. That is very important, and that must be emphasized. As we speak now, the EC has gone through a process. Let us know what the outcome of that process will mean. An assurance. Government, even on Thursday, discussed the definite process that the Minister for Finance spoke about in the 2016 budget regarding what we call an integrated population registration system. So we can have the assurance. It will be up to stakeholders to decide that we will cross-tab the EC's database.
Thank you. You have exhausted your minute.
Of the
Thank you very much.
system.
Yes.
You know, a certain clarity is needed here. It's true, the Let My Vote Count Alliance had an objective calling for a new register. That's true, so there's a certain interrelationship. But the judgment that they have procured goes beyond the issue of new voters register.
That is right.
That's relative to our rights to demonstrate, to assembly, to
That's
movement
right.
the rights. That's the clarification I would make.
Okay, so in that context, it's not a Pyrrhic victory. If in fact it has some eternal value, unless it has been thrown out by another court. Yes, question. Yes, question, please. The one who has a microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Kojo Eduasari.
Alias Swagger.
Yeah, I want the lawyers on the panel to clear something for me regarding the punitive measures that have been was announced a few days ago as regards the 21 judges who were found culpable in the Anas tape. I still can't come to terms with the fact that some of them are going to go home with benefits when we know they have actually been found culpable for the wrong things. Are we not setting the precedent that, yes, you can steal or you can do the wrong thing and still get away with something? Because this is the heart of justice. Are they not the thief, whoever did the pickpocket, whoever stole cassava or whatsoever? Are we not telling them that, yes, your kind of crime warrants you warrant a jail term,
Okay.
but for us, it is something else.
All right, you
Are
have
we
done
not
over a
setting
minute.
that precedent?
Thank you very much, Honorable Eduasare. So when we come, it should address it. The difference between punishment for crime and the internal, disciplinary processes as far as the judges are concerned. Next question, yes.
Thank you. My name is Kojo Yankson. I appreciate the opportunity. The president often talks about his commitment to fighting corruption. In fact, I'd like to read something he said in that light. He said this in November 2013 when some anti-corruption officials went to visit him at the Flagstaff House. He said, "I have instructed the Minister of Justice and Attorney General Iyoko and the Minister of Finance to work with the Minister for Youth and Sports to achieve the following by 31st December 2013. So he gave these institutions 1 month to achieve the following: a secure refund of monies wrongfully paid to or appropriated by any individuals or companies from contracts with SADA, JIDA, and the Ghana Revenue Authority, and to retrieve monies wrongfully paid to Waterville and Isophoton." I gave them 1 month to do this. From that date till now, over 2 years, 14.5 million is all that has been retrieved out of 300 million, over 300 million misappropriated by these institutions he mentions. 14.5 million paid by Agams Group. This was their first quarterly installment that they were supposed to pay in clearing this. Okay, so they are 7 quarters overdue. No one has collected any money from them. My question to Dr. Omane Boamah is, why are these institutions, Minister for Justice, Attorney General Iyoko, Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Youth and Sports, why are they not doing what the President has told them?
Thank you. Kojo Yankson. Hold on. Those are 2 questions we have taken so far, is it? Okay, so can we hold on now? Can we have them addressed? From Eduasare, as the Honorable Eduasare, as the first question.
Let's not conflate the civil and criminal matters, Mr. Eduasare. What has happened is basically an administrative inquiry. The body that met had no power to punish for crime. What it did was to investigate, and it was the first level, found them culpable. Then it recommended that the sanction is that they be removed. Now, it had various options under a law that CA10 was probably in the period between 1957 and 1960, when our parliament was still evolving. And it's an old legislation, but it gives various options for punishment. One of them is dismissal, that is you go home with nothing. One is removal, that is you go home with either a reduced benefit or all your benefits. They opted for that based on the demeanor of the people when they appeared. Now, we may disagree with that, but there's a legal basis for it. But to me, it's not uhuru yet, because the criminal sanction will come. And there are provisions in our law to deprive them of even that benefit as a result of criminal prosecution. Let's take our time, one after the other. Things will unravel. The end game isn't yet. And just a quick one on what the president says. Look, Dr. Abanibama, when God said, "Let there be light," there was light. There was light. There was light. No, I'm speaking to you now. There was light. No, not yet. But when the president speaks, I'm entitled to have a certain level of faith in it. As reluctantly as I feel, sometimes I tune out because I know that 3 years down the line, we'll still be asking questions. When the president says, "Let the money be collected," please, let the money be collected. I'm a lawyer. I will not speak in judgment over what the Attorney General's department has done. But I think that there are ways in which we could have collected some of these monies
20
quicker.
seconds.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank God you didn't commit blasphemy. Another Kojo, on the issue of Waterville, I'm sure you are aware Waterville is a BVI company, British Virgin Island Company. And I'm sure you are also aware that Waterville filed external processes to contest the case. So it is not as simple as you are presenting it. If Waterville had not filed those processes as a BVI company, and even those processes are not in Ghana, so basically what they are doing is they are contesting the decision of the Supreme Court. And Kojo, you are a lawyer. You may help our brother Kojo Annan. Has government behaved like it used to happen previously? No. Government has ensured that the very law firm that fought the TJGM case and won the case for Ghana is a law firm that is fighting Waterville in this case. And the law firm is Dolce and Whitney. You can cross-check. You are a journalist.
I think his specific reference was to the JIDA and...
No, he mentioned Waterville, he mentioned...
Okay,
and
okay.
if you give me the time, I'll come to all this.
You have 40 seconds.
Unfortunately, I mean, it's too short.
He's got 2 minutes reaction. He's
again, in terms of the 14 million Ghana cedis, I will urge you to go beyond that. My information is that what has been paid goes beyond the 14 million Ghana cedis. I don't... Please. You see, this is... I don't... Yes, good. I'm happy you are not contesting the fact that it is possible that it has gone beyond 14. I'm telling you here in locus classicus that it has gone beyond 14 million Ghana cedis. Please, I can check it. I didn't come into this studio with a potman. You see, you need to come to equity with clean hands.
Thank you. And Clara, you have a minute. Clara has some reaction. A minute.
Yes, just to add to what Ace has said already, with respect to the punishment of the judges, this is the administrative bit of it, and there is a list of sanctions. The committee has chosen one. I cannot. You don't have to agree with the reasons that the committee has, but what can be done is that, again, if we are not happy with that provision, then we need to look at that provision, discuss it, and then get Parliament to amend it. But as long as it is there, it is an option available to the committee anytime.
Thank you. Yes, 2 more questions. Who's got the microphone? 2 more questions. Who's got the microphone?
My name is Deroy Kwesi Andrew, PPP Policy Team. Our issue is that on corruption, we want the government to help policy-wise to separate the Attorney General's department from Ministry of Justice. And we want Mr. Isankoma to speak to this issue, the separation of Attorney General's department from Ministry of Justice, just so we can have effective prosecution of high crimes in this country. The next one has to do with National Identification Authority. We believe that we don't need to have multiple cards. We have an authority in place that can do this. Why is the government not resourcing them enough so that they can deal with this matter once and for all?
Okay.
The last one has to do with...
Sorry, you have exhausted your time, even more than you are required. Yes, who is next? Who's got the microphone? Right. The first question is the separation, decoupling the AG from the Ministry of Justice. Right.
issue has to do
Okay,
with the
well,
demand by the...
I was just going to make a comment that I wish that we could have some other people also make contributions rather than
Can I proceed,
the same
please?
person. Yeah.
Has to do with the demand by Let My Vote Count that a new voters register be compiled. I want to place it on record that we of the Volta region are very, very suspicious about the intentions of those people who generated this demand. Because why is it that the research that produced the demand is only based from whatever they did in the Volta region? Why is it that we are very suspicious about them, and we do not think on that score that there is any need for any new register? The issue is that there is opportunity for every Ghanaian to expound any name that they feel is not correct on the register. And it is coming very soon.
Okay.
Why should we jump and then use Volta region
Thank
to
you. Your
attack
time is
the
done.
entire
So that's
country?
not a question. That's a contribution. Can I get one more question? One more question, please. One more. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Two critical, concepts that will help us, which we have identified in our own anti-corruption action plan: the issue of transparency and the issue of accountability. How transparent are we? When sometimes, sometimes 4 ministers will speak to an issue, and they will speak across purpose. The same issue. No, I'm a political scientist. They will listen. They will talk. 4 ministers, the same issue. Then they will give you different information, different statistics. It's a cause for worry. So how responsible are we? How transparent are we? And then, of course, we are also talking about one critical thing that will also ensure horizontal and vertical accountability, is to ensure that we build very viable institutions. I'm a rational actor institutionalist, and I think that one surest way of dealing with this issue of corruption is making sure that these anti-corruption institutions are empowered. How empowered, for instance, is Parliament to do its oversight work, for instance?
Thank you, Dr. Evans Agreda. Thank you very much. Now, the first question was to Ace, decoupling the AGs.
It's not really a matter of names. It's really a matter of functions. Historically, we didn't have a merged Attorney General and Minister of Justice at independence. They were separated. But the then Attorney General was literally hounded out by Jeffrey Bing, who then became Minister of Justice and ultimately, under the 1960 Constitution, merged the 2 offices in one. So historically, they were not even the same. It only happened after 1960. There was an attempt leading up to the 69 Constitution to decouple them. It didn't happen. There was another one by the Mensa Committee in 1978. It didn't happen. So we've had them together for a while. But let's rid it of these names. Aren't we simply saying that we cannot trust the power of prosecution in the hands of the executive? Now, when I say these things, people get a bit queasy. We were in this country when an Attorney General decided that a former First Lady be charged for an offense. Did he really believe the lady had committed an offense when he charged her with the offense? Then on the midnight of handover to power, a nolli prosequi is filed with no explanation to us. So if you didn't believe she was wrong, why did you charge her? And if you believed she had erred, why did you remove it? It is this play with prosecution that makes Ghanaians suspicious of parking the power to prosecute in the hands of the executive. I think this should be the fact. We should take that power under Article 88 away from anybody controlled by the president. However we appoint whoever this person is going to be, is the office of a prosecutor general, whatever, how we are going to appoint the person is another matter. Let's lance this boil. The boil is that we don't want any president or the executive to determine who gets prosecuted for which offense. Let that be done outside the power of the executive, and I think that is a key point.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ace Ankoma, and this is Newsfile. It's been brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN. Welcome to the New World Sasso Spray that is fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, they've been creating smiles since 1985 and celebrating 30 solid years of partnership. Lipton Tea, the #1 tea brand, and Yum Vita, that is the delicious way to grow. As always, my outfit is provided by Latida, and this Christmas you want to get a Latida shirt or something of the sort for a friend or a relative of yours. Thank you very much for all of you. To all of you who tuned in, and and who are watching us on television, and more particularly to those of you who made it into this auditorium. Thank you very much, the ministers who came in, the members of parliament, the former state functionaries who all made it to this place to make this show a success. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon. And this is where we draw the curtains. My guests for the last segment have been Kweku Bako Jr., Clara Kasati, Ace Ankoma, and Dr. Omani Boama. Have a good afternoon. Thank you very much.